It's 2 a.m., you're laying in bed, a thought shows up. Quietly, almost politely. What if I can't handle tomorrow? And just like that, you're gone. Your mind starts building a case, running the simulations, reviewing every piece of evidence. By 3 a.m., you haven't slept, and you're completely convinced something terrible is on its way. Here's the question I want you to sit with. What actually caused that suffering? Was it your life, or was it a thought about your life? Because that thought, what if I can't handle tomorrow, was 6 words. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, but your relationship to it, that lasted hours. That's what kept you awake. That's what wore you out. And that distinction between the thought itself and your relationship to it is the entire game when it comes to anxiety. Get it right, and everything else starts to work. Miss it, and you can do all the right things and still feel completely stuck. Today, I'm going to teach you the skill that sits underneath everything else in anxiety recovery. Not a breathing technique, not positive thinking, something more fundamental than either of those. And once you understand it, you won't ever see your own mind the same way again. Most people who struggle with anxiety have already tried the standard advice. Challenge your negative thoughts. Replace them with positive ones. Ask yourself whether the thought is realistic. And there is value in those approaches. But here's the problem. When you try to challenge an anxious thought, you take it seriously enough to argue with it, which means you're already inside the thought, wrestling with it. And wrestling with the thought gives it a kind of power that's almost invisible. There's a striking finding in psychology called the rebound effect. When people try to actively suppress a thought, to push it away, to not think about it, it becomes more intrusive, not less. The harder you push, the more space it takes up. Anyone who's ever tried to stop worrying on command knows exactly what this feels like. Here's the mistake. The goal was never to change the thought. The goal is to change where you are in relation to it. And that's an entirely different thing. This is important because many people feel like they've tried mindfulness and it didn't work. Usually what happened is they were using it as a relaxation tool, something to calm themselves down in the moment. That's not wrong, but it's not the full picture. Think of it this way. Mindfulness isn't about calming the river, it's about learning to stand on the bank and watch it, rather than being swept downstream every time a thought goes past. When most people hear the word mindfulness, they picture someone sitting cross-legged, breathing very slowly, or they think it means clearing your mind, getting rid of thoughts entirely. And if that's what it is, it sounds pleasant, but probably not very useful when you're spiraling at midnight. Here's what mindfulness actually is. At its core, it's attentional training. The practice of noticing where your attention is and having some say in where it goes. And for anxiety specifically, the most important thing it builds is this: the capacity to observe your thoughts rather than be your thoughts. There's a line that I come back to constantly. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. And that gap between the thought and the noticer is exactly what mindfulness develops. That gap is where your freedom lives. Mindfulness practice has been shown to reduce overactivity in the brain's narrative system, the same system anxiety hijacks, and strengthen the circuitry that allows rational processing to regulate threat response rather than being flooded by it. Studies show these are measurable structural changes, not just subjective impressions. I want to give you a framework that I think is going to change how you see your anxiety, and it starts with a simple observation. There are 2 fundamentally different modes through which we experience our lives. The first is the thought-based mode. This is the mode most of us are in most of the time. We're not actually here. We're in our heads, narrating, evaluating, planning, worrying, replaying. The mind is generating a version of reality and showing it to us like an internal movie. And we're watching that instead of what's actually in front of us. If you've ever felt exhausted by your own mind, not by anything that happened, just by the sheer relentlessness of the mental activity, that's what living in the thought-based mode feels like. The second is the sense-based mode, direct, unfiltered experience. You're not thinking about the coffee, you're tasting it. Not thinking about the walk, you're feeling the ground beneath your feet, the air on your face, the sounds around you. You are here rather than somewhere in your head. Now here's what changes everything. Anxiety is almost entirely a thought-based, future-oriented, language-driven experience. It's a mental simulation, a story your mind tells you about what might go wrong, what you might not be able to handle, what could be coming. It lives in the realm of thought. It is thought, which means this: anxiety struggles to fully run its simulation when you're anchored in direct sensory experience. The two modes compete for your attention, and mindfulness is simply the practice of learning to access the sense-based mode on purpose. Researchers at the University of Toronto found that mindfulness training significantly increased activation of the direct experience pathway in the brain while reducing over-reliance on the narrative processing mode. Critically, the two pathways are largely distinct and somewhat competitive. Building one tends to reduce the dominance of the other. This is why doing something with your hands, cooking, gardening, building something, temporarily quiets anxiety in a way that sitting and thinking through the worry never does. It's not distraction, it's a genuine mode shift. The sensory engagement takes the brain offline from the narrative loop. Mindfulness is just learning to do this on purpose, at will, without needing to chop vegetables every time. Now let's get practical. These three practices build on each other. Start with the first one and add from there. You've probably heard of thought labeling, saying to yourself, "I'm having the thought that," as a way of creating a little distance from a thought. That's useful, but I want to take it one level deeper. Our minds don't produce random isolated thoughts. They produce narratives, recurring themes, familiar plots, the same stories in slightly different clothes each time. The "I'm going to fail" story, the "something bad is about to happen" story, the "I'm not good enough" story, the "I can't cope" story. This is where most people get stuck. They engage with the content of each individual thought, never realizing they're watching the same movie on repeat. Once you can identify the pattern, not just the individual thought, but the familiar shape of the narrative, something shifts. You move from being a character inside the story to being the one who recognizes it. And that recognition changes everything. The story loses authority the moment you can see it as a story. So the next time anxiety ramps up, step back and ask, what story is this? Give it a simple name. You're not dismissing the thought, you're seeing the pattern. You're training yourself to see the movie for what it is, rather than living inside it. This is the direct application of everything we just talked about, and I want you to actually try it right now, not just hear about it. Wherever you are, pause for just a moment, and instead of thinking about your experience, sense it. What can you hear? Not what you think about the sounds, just the sounds themselves. Maybe traffic, maybe quiet. What can you feel? The temperature of the air, whether your hands are warm or cool. What can you see? Not labels and categories, just shapes, light, and color. Even for 5 seconds, what happened? Most people notice something settle. That's not a coping technique doing its job. That's what it feels like to shift modes, to step out of the mental movie and into direct experience. The practice is do this deliberately several times throughout your day in ordinary moments, not as a crisis intervention, as training. The goal isn't to be permanently present, it's to build a pathway that becomes available when you actually need it. The reason most people can't use mindfulness when anxiety is high is that they've never practiced it anywhere else. But if you've done the sense shift 100 times in calm moments, it becomes genuinely available when you need it. Skills are built in practice, not in crisis. Before I share the third practice, let me tell you what's coming, because this is the one that ties everything together. This is the short, formal practice, just 5 minutes a day, that builds the observer capacity underneath the other two. Sit comfortably, close your eyes or soften your gaze, bring your attention to your breath, not to control it, just to feel it. Your mind will wander, guaranteed. It will catch a thought and follow it somewhere. And when you notice that's happened, here's the key. That moment of noticing is the entire practice. Not staying focused, not getting it right, the noticing. Because something just happened. Something in you stepped back from the stream of thought and observed it. Something saw the mind doing its thing from the outside. And that something is the observer. That's the part of you that can watch the anxious story without being swept away by it. I want to step back and tell you why this matters beyond the practices themselves. Almost everything that works in anxiety treatment requires some version of this skill. Exposure therapy, learning to face feared situations, only works if you can observe the anxious thought without fully believing it. Behavioral change only works if there's a gap between the thought and the action. Even deciding to use a coping strategy requires enough observer perspective to notice. My mind is doing that thing again, and I have a choice here. Without this foundation, avoidance feels completely rational. Safety behaviors feel necessary. Every anxious thought feels like a warning that has to be obeyed. You're not making choices, the anxiety is. Now, with this foundation, the thoughts still come, but you're no longer the same as your thoughts. You are the one watching them. And from that position, finally, something opens up. That's what mindfulness, real mindfulness, not the wellness industry version, actually gives you. Not the absence of difficult thoughts, not peace of mind on demand, a fundamentally different relationship to your thoughts. One where you have some say. And if you've spent years feeling trapped inside your own mind, that is not a small thing. If everything I've described today feels less like an occasional struggle and more like the permanent baseline of your life, if the anxious narratives run constantly rather than occasionally, it might be worth talking to someone. Therapy for anxiety isn't about lying on a couch talking about your childhood. It's about learning these specific skills with a professional who can help you apply them to your exact patterns at a deeper level with real accountability. So here's your challenge. Don't try all 3 practices at once. Pick one, the one that landed hardest, and commit to it for 1 week. If it was naming the story, the next time anxiety shows up, step back and ask, what story is this? Give it a name. Notice what happens to its grip. If it was the sense shift, set an intention to shift into sensory experience 3 times today, 5 seconds each. If it was the observer anchor, 5-minute timer once a day for 7 days. Count the returns, not the wanderings. And if this resonated, you're going to want to watch this next video where I go deeper into the specific techniques for creating separation from thoughts in the moment. The skill we built today is the foundation. That video is how you use it. I'm Dr. Tab Shamsi. I post new videos every week on anxiety, focus, and how your brain actually works. So if that sounds useful, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.